La 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 la. Hello, how are you? No, that tinsel is not coming out of my ear. It's just an unfortunate placement, and there's nothing I can do about it now because we've already started. Evening, and welcome to what is not a shelf analysis. This is the beginning of the first of four events happening over the course of the next 4 nights as part of the first ever Ricochet Book Club Christmas Festival, live and online. Briefly, the idea behind this was that despite the fact that the book club is a community of 35,000 people on Facebook, once a year we would meet and have a Christmas get-together. Authors would turn up, people would read stuff, there would be beverages involved, and it would end in the wee small hours of the morning. That's happened for the last, I think, 4 years. Now, prior to now, last year we were in Easton's and O'Connell Street. There's about 150, 160 people turned up for our Christmas party. We can't do it this year. But that doesn't mean we can't do stuff. And instead of me just doing an event, which would be the Christmas party, which I am doing, and it's on this coming Thursday if you want to be part of that, I decided, sure, why don't we have a whole week and we'll turn it into a festival? Because I don't have enough to be going on with at the moment anyway. Oh, it's turned out to be joyous because everybody I asked has said yes, which is always the thing you really want to have happen to this. Firstly, thank you very much to our sponsors, Black Knight. Black Knight are the ones who agreed to sponsor this across the course of the week. This would not be happening without them. Michaeli, thank you very much. A couple of things I want to let you know before we get into tonight's event, which of course is our poetry event. I'm going to tell you about what's coming up over the course of the rest of the week. So first things first, if you are around tomorrow night, same time, 8 o'clock tomorrow night, it's the books of the year. It's going to be myself, Sinead Gleeson, Jan Carson, and Ronan Hessian, all discussing the books of 2020. That is tomorrow night, live at 8 o'clock, here, same place you're watching it now. On Wednesday night, it's a book quiz. And it's going to be great fun because myself and Liz spent half of Saturday night in an increasing state of inebriation writing all of the questions. The idea for the quiz is that it is not competitive. No one's going to finish being the winner at the end. There's none of that going on. Instead, you are only playing against yourself. We'll have a bunch of rounds. They're all themed, and there will be spot prizes. So there are no winners, no losers, just people who win randomly, which is the best way to do these kinds of things. Thursday night here at 8 o'clock again is the finishing event, and it is the Christmas party, and that is myself and Colm O'Regan is going to be joining us. Donal Ryan is joining us. Darren Negrifa is joining us. And who else have I got for Thursday night? I know I should know this. Liz, you can tell me who else is coming on Thursday night. I know I should know. Liz Nugent, that's it. Thank you. Dear Mother of God. It's been a long week. I've already spoken to Liz once this week, and that was today. We were recording a section for the book show Christmas show that's happening on Christmas Day as well. You tend to forget stuff. You tend to forget what's going on in the real world. Now, briefly, before we get started for tonight, I want to remind you one more time about this as well. This is the Christmas appeal we are running in the book club. It is for the DSPCA, Samaritans Ireland, and the Peter McVerry Trust. All of the money is being split equally between all three of those charities. We hit €20,000 at the weekend. We are a little bit above that, which is amazing. I'd love to, by the time we get to the 31st of December, have raised €30,000, 10,000 for each charity. It is possible. It is doable. If you like any of these events that you see throughout the course of the week here, you can make a donation. Throw us anything. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've got $5,000 to spare, we love you. If you've got a fiver to spare, we love you as well. And the details are at the bottom. It's bit.ly/ricochet appeal. That's where you'll find the details. All of the funds being split 3 ways between those wonderful charities, the DSPCA, Samaritans Ireland, and the Peter McVerry Trust as well. I'll keep you up to date on that throughout the course of the week as well. But all you need to do in order to make a quick donation between now and the 31st of December is scrolling at the bottom of the screen below, and that's bit.ly/ricochet appeal. I will keep you up to date on that as we go along. Now, our guests tonight, first night off is a poetry night, and there's a very specific reason behind that, which is when I started doing the shelf analysis series in March, little did I know that so many people that I spoke to throughout the course of that would end up talking about their love of poetry. They would end up talking about how poetry had helped them get through 2020, and it would become one of the ongoing topics of conversation when I was talking to authors throughout the year of 2020. So what better way to actually celebrate poetry of 2020 than to talk to some of the people who make it and who are fantastic at it? I'm going to start, I'm going to press all the buttons, and all the buttons are going to happen here. So first I'm going to do this and say good evening to Sarah Clancy. 3, 2, 1, that goes button. There you go. Sarah, good evening. How are you?
There I show up. Evening, Rick. Evening, everybody watching. It's not too early to say happy Christmas.
Sure, I've got tinsel hanging out of my ear. It's definitely not too late to do any of that nonsense.
I have a kind of a red halo here that I made a small effort, but that's as Christmassy as it has got around here so far.
I'm not sure. I wasn't sure whether it was Christmassy or slightly satanic. It was either or, and if it's a little bit in the middle, I'm fine with that as well. Also, let me press this button here and this button here and say hello in 3, 2, 1 because it counts me down to Martin Dyar. Hello, Martin Dyar. How are you, sir?
Great, Rick. How are you? Great to be with you.
Fantastic. Is all well?
All is well, thanks. All is well.
Hang on for 1 second till I press button 4 or button 3, as the case may be. This usually works, and I'm going to say hello to Chandrika Chandrika. I'm so sorry. I'm going to spend all day getting this right. Chandrika Narayanan-Mohan.
Yeah,
it's simple. It is that easy. It's been a long week.
Once you get started.
Well, that's it. Once you've actually done it once, then that's the easiest thing in the world. How are you?
Good, thank you. All good.
I should point out, obviously, for those people who don't necessarily know who I'm talking to tonight, just in case you don't, Sarah is both a poet and she's a community worker as well. Martin is a lecturer and he's an editor and he's a poet as well. Chandrika is an arts manager and a writer and a performer as well. But you're all here tonight in your capacity as poets. Before we actually get to talking to you guys about your work and about, can we do that, Sarah, as well? Because I'm feeling that as well. Yeah, I'm feeling like there's not enough of my head in this.
I'm feeling like my head is a strange shape.
No, that's fine. We're all good. Can I ask each of you, maybe individually, just to tell me a little bit about 2020, about how it has been for you over the space of the last months and how that has affected your work, if at all? Maybe Sarah, we'll start with you just because you're in that box there.
No problem. So, like everybody, 2020's been it's been quite a funny year for me. I started it with a whole load of poetry gigs. Really, I remember at the very start of the year, I was over in the London Irish Centre, and I was up in Derry, and I was really thinking it was going to be a year full of poetry, and instead I was brought down to earth with a crash, and it became a year full of Zoom meetings like seances with all my work colleagues as we kind of tried to learn a different way of doing community work in rural County Clare. So it was a very odd year. As well as that, while people were still slightly disbelieving in the coronavirus, myself and my partner Anne both got it. But now wherever we picked it up, we were some of the early pioneers, and so that. I think that was around the end of March or early April. So it was only a rumor around us before that. And it's a rotten dose. So we've survived it and we're out the other side, but nobody actually wants to have it. And I think that got the year off to a strange start. It hasn't been a good one for me in terms of poetry and writing, but it may well, you never know with poetry and writing, because it may well turn into something that has been a good year. But like comparatively speaking, it's been a very good year. Otherwise, I haven't lost my work. I haven't done, I'm very pretty much safe and secure. But so I don't think anyone's going to start a fundraising campaign, to raise money for the poets who didn't get to go on any junkets this year. I think we're low down the list there. So that's pretty much it for me. I did see, like we were chatting about, I did see everybody posting about their great artistic achievements and everything, and everybody was learning new languages and learning to cook and everything. And my greatest claim to fame, I think, was eating a large bag of salt and vinegar potato crisps every 2 days for the whole duration of the year this year. So I think that's probably the sum of my achievements, really.
I think it's far better than anything I've done. Chandrika, how's your year been? How has it treated you so far?
I can't really measure up to the crisp eating, to be honest. It started out busy, and then I work for Fish Amble Theatre Company as my day job, and we were in the West End for the first time ever, and then we came back and the very next day was lockdown. So it was really crazy. And I thought we would have a nice break as a theatre company, but instead we just went into overdrive, and I haven't really had a break since. But also at the beginning of the year, I decided this is the year to take my sort of writing career seriously. And again, wrongly thinking I'd have loads of time during lockdown, because sure, I'm, assuming the theatre company would calm down a little bit. But instead I did everything in overdrive for 8 months, and I would now like a very long nap. But it's been exciting. It's one of those, it's two sides to the coin. It's really exciting to come out the year with a lot of surprising amount of achievements on paper. But I'm very, very tired. So there's that.
I can understand that. Maybe just hang on the back of that then as well. Maybe tell us a little bit about your work with Fishamble, because it's one of those things, I suppose, that any of us who go to the theatre on a regular basis are conscious of, that lots of things have reopened and cinemas have reopened. Theatre is still, apart from those things that are being filmed and put out online, it's still in a sense of stasis.
Yeah, it's been really strange. We had a recording of a play called Inside the GPO from 2016. So literally we sat down on the Monday after lockdown was announced and went, should we do these things for the next 2 months? We just made a decision in 1 hour about a program of events. So we screened that over Easter, and then we started a writing project just to keep people busy, saying, send us your 600-word tiny plays. It was just meant to be a bit of, a bit of crack, bit of like, keep yourself writing. And then we ended up like, why not produce it? Why not produce it? But that was really exciting to actually make a brand new production in the last weeks of the first lockdown. And then we were supposed to be in the theatre festival with a really big project called Embargo. And that was like when the restrictions changed every week, sometimes twice a week. So it was madness trying to, shift a giant play all the time. So it's been exciting. And we did make theatre. A lot of it was online. The Fringe happened. We got to be in the Fringe. That's like my favorite month was August, because I just went to the theatre and cinema loads, and it was class. And I miss it so much. That's like those 3 beautiful weeks of experiencing live art. So yeah, I think we adapted. People have adapted. Audiences are very kind and very understanding, and they just want to see art and be part of it. I very much miss being in a theatre though.
Absolutely is. I think it's very much a thing. Martin, what has your year been like?
It's well, here I am. Glad to be here. It wasn't easy. It was very strange. I had a considerable amount of things lined up that didn't happen. It had quite an intense couple of years coming, I guess, right up to March. I taught in UL for 2 years straight, and I was the John Broderick Writer in Residence in the Aidan Heavey Library up into the spring, and so it was a very, very sudden stop. I got married in February as well, and
congratulations.
So in one sense, the first lockdown was a kind of honeymoon, a special time together. Through that spring, I did quite a bit of work. I suppose one of the things that struck me immediately in early March, when we all had that extraordinary sense of fear and anticipation and panic and science fiction around what was happening to us, was that if life is going to change radically now, if things are going to get very, very difficult for us for a long time, and I know this is a common experience, but I'm going through in my mind the things that I've been doing with my life, and poetry was there as a kind of an ultimate value. There was, I remember one particularly challenging afternoon, kind of a sense of everything closing down and all of us so uncertain, and poetry. The idea of poetry, maybe more than the work that was on the table or the work that was or was supposed to be forthcoming. The idea of that commitment meant a great deal. It meant a great deal. And in other times, it might be something that would be defined by the challenge of it, by the niche nature of the craft, if you will. And so from that, I carried forward this idea and experimented with it, that poetry really should have something to say in response. I have a suspicion that the way that things were laid bare, the extraordinary kind of haunted quietness of cities, and the sense of novelty and the exploration and the exposure of that, let's say in April and May, and those of us who weren't struggling terribly, kind of reporting that nature was visible, that the city was visible. This kind of thing struck me as a kind of a collective poetic activity, and that we could maybe see the world, maybe almost for the first time, and notice ourselves in it. And I think there are real implications for that kind of experience. Everyone's still carrying that forward, and it's there, of course, as a personal cocktail with longing to be with family and the journey of not hugging or secretly hugging and all of that kind of thing. But that the poetry in all of us is going to be compounded somehow by that awakening to vulnerability and mortality and our existence in relation to nature. So I suppose I tried to embrace that cocktail. I did edit 2 books during the year, and in the introduction to one, I found myself dwelling on the poems that had been brought together as responses in spirit, even though all of the poems were written prior to the pandemic. I wrote a column as well towards the end of the John Broderick residency for the Westmeath Independent, and I tried to I suppose use poetry, maybe in a journalistic sense, and maybe as a way of representing where maybe the field or the world of creative writing, such as I've known it, had gone, and that was fruitful and meaningful, and I think in some ways that kept me going. It was probably not until September, October before a few new poems were stirring tendril-like, and I was very grateful for them when they did come. And I've been doing a little bit of face-to-face teaching of all things more recently, and that's been very welcome, with the mask, of course, and with distance, and half the class in the lecture theatre and the other half streaming it, medical students. And so, as I said, it's quite a privilege and very welcome. But all within the profundity of level 5 and the vaccine on its way. They are of course extraordinary times.
I'm interested in the idea of both secret hugging and potentially secret teaching going on as well, that there's all these things that just are not part of my world that I don't know. One of the reasons I brought all of you together here tonight is, as I said earlier, the amount of conversation that ended up developing as I was talking to authors of fiction and nonfiction about their love of poetry over the course of the last 7-8 months as I've been doing shelf analysis. And so I wanted to bring everybody here tonight, each of you, to read something maybe from your own work, either from 2020 or something that you've written relatively recently, but also something that you've loved over the course of the last 12 months as well. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to ask everybody to read their own piece first of all. So what are you going to read and why?
Well, I'm at the moment where I'm just about to decide that now this second, Rick.
I've worked with you before. It's not surprising.
I've been tossing up about 2 poems today, and one is a poem I wrote during the lockdown, and the other one is a poem from a few years ago. But it seemed to become, as they often do, it seemed to become more and more appropriate for the lockdown, because one of the things that happened to us, we live in the middle of nowhere anyway. We live in Bell Harbour in County Clare, myself and my partner Anne. But one of the things that has happened is this year we have spent more time in the same small space than you could ever possibly imagine or have planned. And so I'm going to read this poem. It's a poem that was inspired slightly non-poetically by I was trying to write a commissioned poem about climate change a couple of years ago, and every time I tried to do it, I became too earnest and too full of kind of integrity. It sounded extremely preachy, but this is the poem that I ended up with from it, and it's called Prepper Annie and the Anthropocene. A prepper, just for anyone who doesn't know, is I went down so many internet rabbit holes with this, but a prepper are, they're people who are preparing for doomsday, and, they're building their bunkers, usually in the United States, usually quite a right-wing movement. So this is, I'm calling Anne Prepper Annie. Anne thinks my habit of having several daily showers might have to be the first casualty of the coming era. And worse, she suggested that we might have to make our own deodorant or get used to body odor and pass no remarks on it. It's only natural, Anne says. I was wondering how we'd get our hands on coffee and if we should stockpile it already. But Anne thinks if we had it, some other addict might pick up its aroma and come craving across the lowlands, intending to do us harm. And all things being equal, neither of us has much skill in hand-to-hand combat, so it might have to be cold turkey on the coffee for us, Anne says. Anne thinks we'd be as well off as far away from others as is possible. People really can't be trusted when the pressure's on. And Anne said, when I asked her, that the chances of us buying discount fruit in Fresco's or getting home deliveries will be slim to none at best. but she Googled horticulture, how to do it, and windmills for beginners, and neither enterprise is anything she can't handle, Anne says. Anne thinks my experience with farming and livestock husbandry will stand us in good stead, and her dad was a butcher, so between us we could probably make a living thing dead. Though I don't have the heart to tell her that while I spent a lot of time with animals, it was because I was otherwise more or less friendless, and I've never really skinned one for its hide or made my shoes myself. Anne thinks our ability to predict the weather could be somewhat better. And when she quizzed me, I had to admit that I haven't got a notion of how electricity is generated or how to work an aqueduct. And I don't know Morse code or radio frequencies or the principles of combustion engines. And if the truth be told, I'm even pretty vague on how fires are lit without matches. And all the time she's getting sorted here, I'm feeling less and less able for the Anthropocene and what it might mean. But I have to tell you that I saw her yesterday collecting bits of sheep's wool from fence posts and making little ropes with it. And this morning, from our bedroom window, she's lassoed 7 seagulls and is outside this minute teaching them to fish for us. So I'd have to say, together, we're ready for the Anthropocene, and whatever that might mean, unless Annie ever realizes how useless I am and leaves me here to fend for myself. And that's the end of that one. Poets should have to say the end, unless there's a punchline.
That's fantastic. Well done. That's fantastic. Where am I going to go? Chandrika, I'm going to go to you next. Maybe tell me what it is you're going to do and why specifically.
So I wrote a poem in lockdown the day after the SpaceX launch, and it was sort of inspired by the fact that, like, my mum and I have always sort of looked outside of windows, even from different countries, to look at various sort of interstellar things, and we did that day. But also the SpaceX launch day was crazy because it was really in the depths of lockdown, like really bad. And I was just sitting here in this, I literally live in a room on my own, and then on this tiny screen on my laptop with 2 men just going to space. And it was the most surreal, but like truly beautiful experience, because it was so like just the polar opposite of where we all were, was them really understanding what escape meant. So it was a magical time. But yeah, but I decided to write about that because me and my mom were just, she lives in Switzerland, and we were on the phone trying to go like, do you see the shuttle or the rocket? And yeah, we both failed at it, but we both were trying. So this is called Stargazing with My Mother. We've seen stars fall before, she says over the phone, as we peer out over rooftops from different sides of Europe, looking for a blip or a spark against the blue, trying not to mistake a rocket for a star. You need binoculars, she says, and I remember how she demonstrated before handing me a pair as the Hale-Bopp comet blazed across a New Delhi sky. Look, over there, she exclaimed one time, pointing to a needle streak of white, as we stood outside a Swiss hotel, not caring what people would think of 2 Indian women gazing upwards into the night.
Fantastic, fantastic. Hang on, let me press my other button that puts me back on screen again, but I'm doing that anyway from here. Chandrika, that's gorgeous. Martin, can I bet you back? I think I've got Martin back on screen somewhere. There we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Martin, tell me a little bit about what you're going to read for us.
I'm going to pair 2 things together. One is shorter thing, and another one a little bit more substantial. And the first one is it connects in maybe with some of the things I said earlier about that uncanny time in April and May, when, despite the fearfulness of what was happening, there was a sense of novelty. There was a sense of discussing the new world that we had found ourselves in, and the noticing of animals was something that was quite loud to my ears. And as someone who was locked down in Dublin at that time, concerned very much for family in the west of Ireland, reports of and daily updates about the activity of birds and the activity of foxes in particular were always very heartening, because they were always good signals that people were feeling grounded, that they were weathering the storm. and Derek Mahon, who I think we might hear some poetry from later. I believe Sarah might read some Derek Mahon for us. Produced a wonderful Lockdown Fox poem, Fox on Grafton Street, who garnered some notoriety and was liked and shared countless times. But there was something about that, the spectacle of the fox on Grafton Street, I think, that gave us a sense that not only was nature talking to us through this catastrophe, but also that nature was amongst us in some way. And our imaginations, of course, were running wild trying to get a foothold. But wildlife behaved differently when the world went quiet. And for some people, that was a delight. So this poem is called A Lockdown Fox, and it's a sonnet. As the fox became increasingly brazen, her daytime visits to the yards and gardens that fell within the hill's crooked radius caused more of a stir. It was a spring of plague, and a time when nature seemed to be speaking greenly through a hyperactive mouthpiece of salvation and destruction at once. If a young fox were to domesticate itself in order to deliver the hill's signals, and the better to inscribe love by circling humankind in its fresh tower of fear, it might be no great miracle. And yet, those paws brought ecstasy. The whole street felt acknowledged by the earth and longed for more.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Let me press all my appropriate buttons here.
I might contradict myself and not tag on the longer poem to that. I have a couple of others prepared, so I'll be waiting duly for the nod to read another.
Fantastic. Let's do another. Let me put everybody back in here just for a moment as well, because one of the things I've asked everybody to do as well is take something that they have loved over the course of this year and to bring that here, whether it's something that's brand new, that's been written by somebody else, or something that just has sustained you and gotten through you this year. I might go back again, even though you're down here now, confusingly, Sarah. Tell me, I don't know how to operate any of these buttons. I just press things until people appear on the screen. Sarah, tell us, who are you going to read from, and tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So I picked two poets that unfortunately, two great Irish poets, really two of the finest poets we've ever had, I think, Evan Boland and Derek Mahon. And I picked a poem each from both of those people. Both of them died earlier this year. So Evan Boland died in April and Derek Mahon just recently in October. Now I thought, like I said, I didn't want to turn the evening into a Christmas party about death. But one of the things maybe worth saying is that both of these two people, if you're a poet, you can live on, if you're a poet or a fabulous rock star or something. And one of the things that has happened is that both of these poets are people with brand new collections out. So as Martin Dyar mentioned, Derek Mahon has his last collection now. It's going to be Washing Up is out from the Gallery Press, and you can get it now. And also The Historians is out from Evan Boland. So I might start with the Evan Boland one. And the poem that I picked of hers to read is one. It's a pretty famous poem, but I was reminded of it of all the cheerful themes you could imagine. The new documentary that on RTE, The Hunger, and its treatment of the famine. And so this poem, it's a poem about love and the famine, and it's probably one of Evan Boland's best, and it's called Quarantine. I hope I do it justice. In the worst hour of the worst season of the worst year of a whole people, a man set out from the workhouse with his wife. He was walking. They were both walking north. She was sick. with famine fever and could not keep up. He lifted her and put her on his back. He walked like that, west and north, until at nightfall, under freezing stars, they
rejoin us as well. If you're joining us in the middle, the first part's been fantastic. The first 31 minutes was absolutely exceptional. And then we've had, it has been one of those days on the internet. If you're trying to use your Gmail earlier on, or you were trying to use Google at any stage during the day, I'm absolutely sure this has nothing to do with this. But hold on for a moment, everybody, and we're going to see if we can get everybody back for our event here as well. And we're going to see if we can get everybody logged back on again in 2 seconds. If everybody wants to try and click their links again, stay where you are. Don't move. Just stay right there. Okay, I think our technology problems have managed to sort themselves, or at least sort themselves in some way, shape, or form. Because as far as I can tell, if I pray, I'm going to get Martin Dyar. Hello, Martin. How are you? The technology walked away. And now I can't hear you. Can you hear me, Martin? I'm going to try, if you want to try logging in again, because this happened to us last week, I'm going to kick you out again. This is turning it on and off again. Try logging in again, sir. Yeah, this has happened to us last week already. Again, stay there, don't move. We'll see if we can get everybody back in just a moment. I think Chandrika is back with us. Chandrika, I'm going to try pressing a button and see if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Hello, how are you?
I can hear you.
You're back.
Hello.
Fantastic. You're back and you're here. Lovely. I have no idea what just happened there. That's neither here nor there, and it doesn't really matter. I'm going to try Sarah. Are you there, Sarah, as well? I think Sarah's back on screen as well. Or at least I hope Sarah is.
I'm here. I'm here.
There you go. Sarah.
I'll have you know I read the whole poem.
And the internet kicked us off. So I'm going to have to ask you, much as I hate to do this, to start again, if that's okay. And if you wouldn't mind terribly giving us that one more time, please, Chandrika, hold on there where you are, and we'll come back to you just in 2 seconds. Because as if we needed to prove it, this is live internet, my friends. Right, Sarah, here we go.
Perfect. So I'm going to read this poem, and just to say, better luck the second time round. And just, I'd like to read it in tribute to Evan Boland, who did so much for so many poets, particularly women poets in Ireland. And it's called Quarantine. In the worst hour of the worst season, of the worst year of a whole people, a man set out from the workhouse with his wife. He was walking. They were both walking north. She was sick with famine fever and could not keep up. He lifted her and put her on his back. He walked like that, west and north, until at nightfall, under freezing stars, they arrived. In the morning, they were both found dead of cold, of hunger, of the toxins of a whole history. But her feet were held against his breastbone. The last heat of his flesh was his last gift to her. Let no love poem ever come to this threshold. There's no place here for the inexact praise of the easy graces and sensuality of the body. There's only time for this merciless inventory. Their death together in the winter of 1847, and also what they suffered, how they lived, and what there is between a man and woman, and in which darkness it can best be proved.
Amazing. Are you going to do a Derek Mahon poem for us as well then? Because I think you're right. I think both deserve their moment.
Yeah, I was going to do a Derek Mahon poem, and again, this almost unbelievably is in memory of Derek Mahon, because the man that we were celebrating, he almost became the poet of the hour of the coronavirus, because he was so prolific at the last moment. But this is a poem that was picked up by people, and it was read by everyone and produced on RTE, and it's a really hopeful poem, to a hopeful poem, I think, for all of us. Such a little gift that he could leave. It's called "Everything is Going to Be All Right." How should I not be glad to contemplate the clouds clearing beyond the dormer window and a high tide reflected on the ceiling? There will be dying, but there's no need to go into that. The poems flow from the hand unbidden, and the hidden source is the watchful heart. The sun rises in spite of everything, and the far cities are beautiful and bright. I lie here in a riot of sunlight, watching the day break and the clouds flying. Everything is going to be all right.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I'm going to see if I can bring everybody back on screen again. Let's see if everybody's back. Chandrika, I think you're here as well. Martin,
Fingers crossed.
here as well. Let me see if I can get everybody back up as well. Do I have everybody? I think I do. I'm fairly sure I do. Martin, you're back with us as well. I'm not sure if I can hear Martin. Can we hear you, Martin? Can anybody else hear Martin? Because I can't hear Martin. You can hear me. Can everybody else hear Martin? Yes, no, maybe? No, okay. Chandrika, I'm going to come back to you again. Maybe you'll do the next one just while we see if we can sort that situation out with Martin. What are you going to read, and who is it by? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this year I got a chance to edit Poetry Ireland's Trumpet. So I got to sift through a lot of amazing writing by a lot of people I know, just to see if there's something that would suit. And Nifi Casa is a brilliant poet. She's from the Democratic Republic of Congo, but she lives here in Dublin, has been here a while. And this was actually a poem that I came across. I really loved it. It didn't quite fit the theme and the sort of format of the issue, but I really, really loved the poem. And she's also just a fantastic emerging poet, and more people should know about these sort of poets that have been around but need more spotlight because they deserve it. And the poem is called Charcoal Iron, and it's about those mad old like box irons that you literally put charcoal in. And it's funny because they have the same in India as well. Like across the road from my sort of grandparents' house, you literally give your laundry and the dude like uses this crazy old school iron right there. And I told her that, and she said she'd never heard someone relate to it. She didn't know that it was across different countries. So I really like that this one beautiful poem about something can spark a connection across totally different countries. So I liked that. So this is Charcoal Iron by Nifi Casa. She pressed his shirts to her last days, squinting her eyes, facing the ridges that still stood over the years. Steam iron could not do. She liked the old ways, the iron of coal. It stayed in a cabinet, a jewel, a recipe for her lover. An alloy boxed, a dumbbell's mass, shaped like a crocodile's head. Its upper lip pierced, a screw-like ring for locking the zigzagged jaw. The handle, a scute on the alligator. Hot charcoal was placed inside the box for her. Quiet, sitting, a shirt in hand, she waited for the metal to heat, then used the iron, the same as a modern one, feeling each layer, the soft skin of her lover, her back, a bow, her trembling hand, a master. She pressed his shirts to her last days, squinting her eyes, facing the ridges that still stood over the years.
Amazing. Fantastic. I'm going to see if I can bring everybody else back here now. I'm going to press this button here. Hopefully we'll be able to hear Martin. Martin, can you hear us? Because we definitely can't hear you, or can hear you. Let's try that one more time. Hello, Martin. Have I lost him? Have I pressed the right button? Wait, I haven't pressed the right button. No, that one was my fault. That one is entirely on me. And this is why I'm not a television director. Martin, how are you?
I'm great. Can you hear me?
We can hear you back now. Thank the Lord, who I don't believe in. Well done. Fair enough. Martin, so hopefully we'll get this done. We asked you to pick something as well that was by somebody else. Tell us a little bit about the poem that you chose and why.
Well, I chose to read a poem by the poet Shirley MacLuhan, who passed away in 2016, before her time, of cancer, in fact. And she was from Waterford originally, and had published several collections of poems in her lifetime, and was very, very highly regarded, if not necessarily terribly well known. And just at the end of last year, her collected poems were published, Origami Doll, new and collected poems. And it's a very special book. I've been spending time with it this year, and there's one collection called Stone Dress, which is included in its entirety in it. And from that, I chose to read tonight a poem called The Argument for Chemotherapy. And I'm presently editing a book called Vital Signs, poems about illness and healing. So for a number of years, I've been on the lookout for poems as good as this. And there's something very special about it. I was reminded when I was preparing this afternoon, looking at the poem again, of a comment by the critic David Denby, writing about the film The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And he gave it an absolutely rave review in the New Yorker. But he began by saying, this should not be possible. The book, The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is written by Jean-Dominique Bauby, blinking out every single letter just with his eye. He only had the use of his eye. He had locked-in syndrome. And David Denby said, this should be impossible. This should be miserable and mawkishly sentimental. But he concluded that the film is so good that that it's like the rebirth of cinema itself. So he absolutely turned it on its head. And a poem that has a title like The Argument for Chemotherapy, you could say, doesn't promise you something more perhaps than suffering, than the sense of loss associated with it. There are a number of poems in Origami Doll where Shirley MacLuhan writes about her illness and her experience of hospitalization and surgery. And she does it in extraordinary terms. The suffering is there, definitely. The experience is there. But there's also an extraordinary sense of presence, an extraordinary sense of passion for language and word relish. And so it's autobiographical, but only up to a point. She's very much concerned with her reader and with the family members that she's addressing. And in this poem, as she does in a few, in Stone Dress, healthcare professionals make cameo appearances, and they're never glorious. They never, they lean on jargon. Some of them are a little bit vain. And yet at the same time, it's not a negative perspective. That's the thing that really struck me about it. They're compassionate portraits of people doing their job. And while she's, in a sense, a vulnerable patient, she's also an extraordinary witness. She's someone who's anchored by her relationships and by her very keen perceptiveness. And I think all of that will come across in this poem, which is perhaps in the spirit of the kind of year that we've had, being so profoundly reacquainted with our own vulnerability and our mortality. And that's in one sense, I think, the journey of COVID-19. So this is The Argument for Chemotherapy by Shirley MacLuhan. Imagine we wanted to knock down this wall, says the doctor. This pen is the hammer, which represents the tablets. And he begins to tap, tap, tap with his ballpoint pen on the cool white wall beside the desk. I wonder who's next door. An intern with a headache or another imagistic doctor. rapping for her patient's benefit on the opposite side, till one day, many demonstrations down the road, a keyhole of hope is exposed. Eventually, he rests his silver biro on my case notes, we would break down the wall. But what if, and he stands, I took a sledgehammer. He swipes with tailored jacket arms, a Victorian high striker, a Thor. Now you see what happens to the wall.
Fantastic. Love that. Here we go. Yeah, and let me get everybody else in, because sorry, everybody else is applauding too, and I haven't taken you off mute and everything. That's been a wonderful way for us to begin our fortnight festival. All I can do is wish the absolutely most wonderful, peaceful, not work-related Christmas to all of you. Thank you so much to Chandrika Narayanan-Mohan, to Martin Dyar, and to Sarah Clancy. Guys, thanks so much for coming along tonight. It's hugely appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks so much for
having us and inviting us. And lovely to hear you both from the depths of the internet.
Let's all try and do this in reality sometime.
Very soon.
Guys. Good luck.
Very soon. Good night.
Oh, and that's my guests for tonight. Let me remind you one more time, I'm just going to throw it in here to you. If you do fancy making a donation to the Ricochet Book Club appeal that is happening, it is our Christmas appeal. It is in aid of our 3 charities that we are giving money to this year, the DSPCA, the Samaritans Ireland, and the Peter McVerry Trust. You can find the link there at the bottom. It's bit.ly/Ricochet appeal. Scrolling at the bottom of the screen, bit.ly/Ricochet appeal. That is down there. Other than that, all I can say to you is that if you're knocking around tomorrow night, we will have events tomorrow. We'll have events on Wednesday and Thursday as well. Tomorrow night, here, same time, 8 o'clock, same place. It's going to be myself, Sinead Gleeson, Ronan Hessian, and Jan Carson, all talking about our favorite books of 2020. Until then, have yourself a lovely rest of the evening, and I'll see you same time.